There's an unhealthy obsession with viewing Steam chart numbers that just plagues gamers nowadays. It really feels like there's a substantially existing archetype of person online that prefers to spend their time constantly refreshing SteamDB on what I really hope is a second monitor. It's a behavior that shouldn't make any sense unless someone has some sort of materially vested interest in a game's revenue and profit. Like, I get it if a person is day trading or even playing a city builder to have their eyes glued to some fluctuating numbers that truly matter to whatever they're doing, and something that I'd consider actively meaningful engagement, right? Like, they can actively do things influenced by what's going on, hold, sell, build, demolish. But exerting the effort to spam Marathon's player count in its community spaces instead of letting the culture be about the game's systems or, actually playing Marathon is not the same as playing City Skylines. At best, I can give it mentally unwell concern trolling as a pretext for some deep-seated vindictive thought patterns as a subtle attempt to right some ill-perceived slight. At worst, it's a concerted effort to bully and harass coming from spiritually ugly ogre-like attitudes that want Bungie to fail and collapse, but their convictions aren't quite at the level of that guy who bomb-threatened Nintendo, so chart posting is the next best use of their time, which is also mentally unwell. But Marathon is simply the latest and greatest version of this phenomenon, the current epitome and I hope final shape that this particular brainworm takes, because I would love nothing more than this hysteria to stagnate, then calcify, into an unmoving, dead, and discarded way of looking at the world of gaming for the viewpoint of the average consumer. I say epitome because Marathon, since it's been available to be played, has been the top searched game on SteamDB. And even right now, if I go check, yep, still most searched. Like, this is on a whole different scale than other, what do you call this, like new age analytics brigading? Like, let me talk about an article that really put this into perspective for me. Last year. Or guess what? It was still talking about Marathon. This is unbelievably exhausting. So Mikhail Klementov's Kill the CEO in Your Head, base title by the way, play on the Kill the Cop in Your Head saying, so you might immediately see where this is going, is an article that's essentially saying, what the F happened to gaming discourse and why is everyone an armchair CEO online? It criticizes the tendency for reviews and opinion pieces at the moment to say something like, well, I like this game, but will the general audience? Which is so dead on as a gripe against review content if you're a gamer who wants their media diet to look more like video game book club discourse. The focus more on the what's and whys of your own feelings about a game. The article also asserts that our public sphere nowadays is full of speculation and how that plays a part in forming this new dysfunctional public consciousness. Which doesn't make sense to me because in the big 2026 where people get unbelievably geeked over gambling under the veneer of prediction markets, and most American assets are tied up in debt and stonks instead of something responsibly material that usefully exists, like oil, which we are running disastrously low on, means that the default way of thinking for a ton of people out there is to give much more credence to some nebulously defined assumed value over what used to be intuitively more substantial, like the utility or meaning behind a given work. And like the article says, dooming to fit in is the safe bet if the narrative is set based on analytics alone. Well, maybe not alone, more like analytics presented with schadenfreude. I don't know, I'm not German and English doesn't have a word for enjoying others' suffering, and I read this word sometimes, but I've never said it aloud. Until now. And honestly, dooming is cowardly. Like, being cynical nowadays is so lame because it's just dudes smugly heckling in a safe little corner instead of barging into universities half naked, screaming and brandishing a defeathered chicken. But aren't analytics the end all be all? Numbers don't lie, right? Surely we can reach some sort of objective conclusion on whether something is good or not, right? Well, if that was the case, philosophy as a field would cease to exist because apparently we've already found the truth of the nature of existence. Need I remind y'all that the experience dictates the numbers, not the other way around. Okay, the numbers obviously inform the experience, but what they are used for has an intent that can sway said experience. The chart itself isn't indicative of any sort of qualitative assertion about that game, and unless you somehow have insider info on Sony and Bungie's future plans and budgeting to contextualize with, it's also not a good objective assertion either. So in practice, its usage is a rallying flag for a movement to see Marathon die. And at that point, the numbers stop meaning anything useful in this particular discourse, because all they represent is a pretext for multiple ancillary forces to muster behind in their contempt for Bungie. This means that this game is dying, here's a SteamDB chart type of post is a self-sucking influence on the aforementioned experience dictating the numbers. Because if the vast majority of intent behind these posts is ill-willed concern trolling, then that means the context in which they are used cause a negative focus. Which means for onlookers that aren't privy, they might just see some number of these posts, think, I guess the game is dying, and then move on, not giving a second thought when they otherwise might have tried it out. That onlooker is a sane person. That is perfectly reasonable behavior. People have all these quick glimpses and assumptions about everything all the time because it's not the default reaction to investigate any further if it seems clear-cut that the most popular sentiment leans a particular way. But as a result, like, on God, I'd bet so much on that if every single one of these Steam chart posts were removed from the internet, that Marathon's player base would have been massively increased. Whether or not that still would be enough for Sony's irresponsible expectations and Bungie's propensity to light money on fire is a whole other story, and And I get that this Steam chart derision is also emblematic of a wider disdain for everything wrong with the games industry, with AAA live service money grubby bloated slop shops, but guess what? Not only is this outcry the wrong solution, because if you want to stop the worst of these industry practices, you're gonna have to start getting political, like doing a stop killing games. All of the underlying rationale behind chart posting is still not relevant to the point I'm trying to make about the general experience and reception around any given game. Experience dictates the numbers. Part of the experience is people playing the game, part of that is people talking about the game, and you sure as hell don't need to play the game to talk about it and shape that experience. Doesn't matter if there's a ton of people playing and loving it if they are posting less due to actually playing and are spending less time on social media, and they get drowned out by posts from Steam chart spammers doing numbers and drawing far more attention than sick clips and fun gameplay tips. And so the typical presented experience veers negative from no fault of the genuinely enthusiastic player base, and a negative experience hurts the numbers. It's paradoxical and stupid, I know, quite similar to the inverse of hyping a stock so then it grows and then it's hyped because it grew, so on and so forth. And yeah, there's obviously material reality tied to all this, like, yeah, duh, Marathon will die if it doesn't bring in enough. And I would totally understand if people stand to gain from this whole, the Marathon situation is crazy right now, players are in exodus akin to how they hightailed out of Highguard, or like how I skedaddled out of my local Waffle House once the 3 a.m. Blicky was drawn. But I don't know, did some quick searches on Polymarket and Kalshi with terms like Marathon, Bungie, Destiny, and nothing pops up, so like, what the hell even is the point of all this? If Marathon dies, it dies, and the C-suite isn't going to learn anything and just golden parachute out onto their favorite pedo island. Again, if we want to actually help devs from dumbass executives so they can focus on just making sick games, gotta get political. Games dying helps no one and just spurs more layoffs instead of ever punishing leadership. As for the perspective of wasting time on a live service getting canned, playing something isn't like I'm trying to do some big life decision for my future, like choosing where to live. This is just a video game. And if Bungie goes under, like, sure, I'd be bummed because I got some good memories from multiple thousands of hours in Destiny 1 and 2, but some people see that as time wasted down the drain, but like, those hours are memories of things you already experienced. Those were moments of fun already had. Like, unless someone sees that time spent as some sort of investment loss, that's the only way I see it being actually devastating psychic damage. But if someone's engagement with Destiny was seen purely as some addiction placating checklist chasing and collecting gear as a form of investment for some nebulous future content where it's probably not going to matter anyways because of power creep, I'd argue more that that method of engagement is an unhealthy form of fun in the first place. If we can even call that fun. It genuinely feels like no-life games without some form of auxiliary real-world trading market brain breaks people if they put too much into them. Because I don't see this type of discourse from, say, ex-TCG players who can sell their collection and move on. Maybe it's an incredibly grounding moment to have it sink in if someone realizes that after spending thousands of dollars on microtransactions, maybe on some cheats and boosting or carry services, and then have all that potentially stripped away so they start crashing out. But I don't know, I think a more productive use of that energy is supporting, like, stop killing games or something with whatever they're doing. Because yeah, it sucks if a game dies and you can't access it anymore, so if there was actually some preservation going on, this wouldn't even be an issue. Or maybe I'm just a weirdo, because I've legitimately spent hundreds of hours in small dead/dying games like Magic Spellslingers, Killing Floor 3, and Catan World Explorers. That's... if you know what that is, you're crazy. But I'd hate for it to be considered weird to, I don't know, just be emotionally pure by simply playing games because one finds them fun. It's not even like a small player base is actually an issue for playing a game. It's really just more of a prerequisite for lively, constant online discussion. And clearly, the funniest solution to live service anxiety is to actually resuscitate the CEO in your head. Get more business-minded and diversify your gaming portfolio to bulwark against future uncertainty. Aspire to know life as many live services as possible. Be the platonic ideal of a Sony Games as a service consumer. Jokes aside, that's all a side tangent about disgruntled Bungie fans. Again, there's a lot of differing factions all rallying behind the Marathon hate. Destiny players feeling abandoned is just one of them. For instance, I don't really have anything substantial to say about the flank from Arc Raiders enjoyers because I don't play that game and I have no interest because it's a third-person shooter, so I don't feel a need to do this compare, contrast, flinging poop at each other's communities thing going on. Because I like to partake in normal person behavior called minding my own business. Deadass, I am writing this video, go on a quick TikTok break, and my For You page showed a tiny Marathon stream and the streamer is reading a chatter's comment saying, M sucks, Arc Raiders W, which was some crazy topical whiplash for me, but also, really? Why do people go into other spaces like this just to be annoying? I sincerely do not understand. And for the love of God, do not take this as an attack on Arc Raiders. I have nothing against that game. It's just something that I'm indifferent about, and I really don't want to partake in this stupid dick-swinging contest of, oh, my game is obviously better than your game. Look, the higher player count objectively reflects that. Okay, I don't feel the need to play something just because it's popular to feel validated. And if anything, I'd be concerned if Arc Raiders wasn't doing numbers, because my understanding is that it's a super chill, casual vibes game in comparison to Marathon currently being a Dark Souls challenge run without summons or magic. But back to the article asking gamers to focus focus on how games makes them feel instead of just how much they sold. This entire mindset has been going on a lot the last handful of years. Like, it just feels like the general attitude around not just games, but any hobbies have to be scrutinized in this way. Because I don't ever remember seeing people last decade using movie box office numbers as an argument for quality nearly as much as nowadays. I think the tipping point for when this really started to annoy me was when search engines would start to show Steam charts instead of party sizes if you look up a game's player count. As someone who partakes in quite a bit of friend slopping or whatever random multiplayer games that come up, it's incredibly important for my friends and I to know if we can all play together. The issue usually being that session sizes are too small because so many games use 3 or 4 player. But to this day, I still make that mistake because I'm so used to being able to just search like, I don't know, Outlast Trials player count and have Google tell me the session size instead of the new default being the Steam chart. Doesn't even have to be a newer game. Like, we were looking up Ghost Recon Wildlands, still does that, even though its active player base is such a not useful default metric at all given its age and irrelevance. Something about Steam DB algorithmically becoming the top hit gives me a huge ick because it's flavored similarly to a recession indicator vibes-wise. Like, it's feeling akin to some sort of general anti-sociality indicator, but that's a topic for a whole nother video. Though, I do legitimately think that the atomization of people's social lives does have something to do with latching onto bizarre brainworms like Steam charts as some off-putting stand-in for social legitimacy, to cling on to the perceived popular thing in the absence of close friendships. I suppose what I'm ultimately advocating for is to do as the article says and stop listening to the CEO in your head. For that matter, stop listening to the cop in your head too. We really don't need any more panopticon-like systems ruling over our thoughts. To be cringe is to be free, and not to sound like some bootleg Chinese proverb, but we really gotta stop defeating ourselves before we've even started. To self-censor and compare against what the apparently correct popular thing is and internalize worries about being seen as cringe for not following some supposed statistical guarantee is actually the true cringe. It's flaccid, uninspiring, and doesn't actually move the needle towards positive vibes because it's just being comfortable with a familiar dullness that only brings an inevitable pernicious melancholy. And just to clear the air about my tastes and biases, because I don't want any randy assumptions going on, since I know people got that he loves pancakes so he must hate waffles brains, and so much of our use of language is filled with assumptions unless directly addressed. I deeply enjoy Marathon, coming from a background of playing a lot of Destiny with some on and off rating and sweaty PvP, but quitting the game at Edge of Fate. And also, I did not grow up with Halo. This is my first real extraction shooter because while I did try Hunt Showdown and didn't super like it, it's apparently joked about among the wider extraction shooter space as being a slower paced battle royale. And I really felt that because I generally didn't find myself ever caring about extracting because in practice you were always well equipped and it didn't feel like there was anything to do besides run around and killing people. Whereas in Marathon, not only is running out of resources to bring in legitimately a real concern on top of the existence of actually valuable tiered loot, which makes successfully extracting actually tense and feel immensely rewarding, but there's all sorts of nonsense going on in a match where people have tons of varying objectives to do, and so matches feel really dynamic in how they play out, where sometimes you get into fights with the whole lobby, and other times people do their thing and get out immediately. Like any fan, I have my gripes with the game, but I feel that the majority of them are nitpicks and kind of superfluous at this point from being quickly addressed by Bungie, plus I feel that a ton of issues will go away with simply adding in more content. One example being Cryo being a shotgun grenade spam experience, but like that immediately stops being an issue if another endgame map that's longer range is added. And when it comes to my takes on Bungie, I think the devs are based and create incredible experiences when you let them cook, and that the Bungie management seems like absolute dog water from all the news cycles that have come out over the years. Like, cold take at this point, but I am of a mind with the opinion that Destiny 2 truly began its death throes with Beyond Light and the untenable situation they were in of deleting content due to the engine upgrade. Because it's now clear that the ideal but logistically impossible move then was to do a Destiny 3 with that engine upgrade, but they didn't have the resources at the time since they were then recently independent. Now they're saddled with the reputation of being that greedy studio that deletes content you paid for, on top of an in-game infrastructure that's falling apart after laying off a ton of QA. So it's been really nice playing Marathon where the game just works better because it's on shiny new architecture that can facilitate frequent updates without breaking stuff, which, if I recall correctly, was apparently a huge upgrade reason for that Destiny 2 engine jump in the first place. On top of Marathon not having like 100-something gig file size since it doesn't have to bloat itself with asinine amounts of wasted PV levels people only play at release and then sit there dead and taking up space for years to come. But that's frankly an unenviable, seemingly unsolvable design challenge of Destiny's genre because deleting content is bad for optics and also newcomer story onboarding. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on Marathon, Bungie, and the surrounding discourse. The public imaginative is incredibly lacking and frankly just as myopic as big game company leadership. But it's not the job of the public to do anything other than make it clear what they like and dislike, because it's up to the studios to read between the lines and actualize what are usually unconsidered solutions, since people aren't devs and tend to not have good working pipeline considerate suggestions. So being privy to that, let's not clog up the online public consciousness with Steam charts and instead vocalize tangible grievances and extols. Yeah? I'd respect people's opinions a lot more if they dropped the chart facade and just said outright that they want Marathon to die and why they'd like it to keel over. Hope this video resonates, and please drop a like if you enjoyed.
Dude.
They love that when their game is making a ton of money.
Well,
My game made $2 billion.
And
Your
it's
game only made $1 billion.
What do you want? What, do you not see how stupid this is?
Yeah.
Do you like that your game is making more money than another game? That's so
Yeah,
cringe.
dude, you know what?